Great. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for coming to this panel's session and to our presentation title, again, Grounding Digital Scholarship in the Analogue, Reimagine Library Fellowships Post-Pandemic. As Professor Mandel stated, my name is Roberto Vargas, and this is my colleague Amanda Licastro, who speaks shortly. We're both librarians at the libraries of Swarthmore College. But before I begin, I would like to, there they are. Before I begin, I would like to start with a sound, if you allow me. This sound, which represents, as Glenn Fishman writes, a 20th century technology being tunneled through a 19th century network, aside from rebirthing memories and nostalgia in us, it serves as an object representing our main point in argument. As the blips and crackling of a digital device travel through an analog telephone network, what constitutes the analog and digital is synthesized in this sound. Our main point today is to explore the pedagogical consequences of understanding an object as having been, currently being, and will be both digital and analog. So, in other words, to introduce and emphasize a temporal dimension to a binary. In this case, rather than focusing on zeros or ones, either digital or analog, asks when digital, when analog. So, to view our objects in a continuum that run in both directions and are always both digital and analog. So, to further clarify and contextualize, ours is a pedagogical approach for our fellowship, which Amanda will speak on shortly. But we understand that there are functional and material differences in digital and analog objects. We want to ask pedagogically, what if we pretend that they're both at the same time? And apply that to our fellowship. To further clarify and contextualize, there are and continue to be much writing in this topic. We have not in the past, but we might, as we continue to reshape this fellowship, introduce the Macy conferences on cybernetics, which these conferences serve to establish this binary model of digital versus analog. And also, can I explore more seminal tech books, like this book published by the literary scholar Professor Catherine Hales, published titled, My Mother Was a Computer, in which she engages how languages of code become analogous and almost supersede that of speech and writing, kind of like a Derridian argument, and how the binaries of the analog and digital are blurred. In this book, she asserts that the world as we sense it on a human scale is basically analog, and we mediate the digital through it. So other books also are, for example, Program Inequalities by Mars Hicks and as well others. But for now, I want to give you a little bit more of a context of where we're coming from and where the fellowship is located. Swarthmore is a small liberal arts college located in Swarthmore, PA, just outside of Philadelphia. The fellowship, now in its 10th year, is called LibLab, and was born out of bringing together another often highlighted binary, that of STEM versus humanities students. By bringing students from both sides of this binary, we hope to model our argument as we pair readings with teachings of the age and computational skills. For example, a reading like Langdon Winner, Do Artifacts Have Politics, will be paired with Eola Biss, Time and Distance Overcome. And so unlike some of the nostalgia created by the sound of the modem.
I'm going to take it from here. Thank you so much, Roberto. What we're finding is that actually our students have a lack of nostalgia for library spaces. So we really wanted to reimagine the LibLab Fellowship to ground them in the physical spaces of the library. Why? First of all, during the lockdown portion of the pandemic, many students didn't have access to physical libraries, whether that was their college libraries early in their college careers, their high school libraries, and very specifically in our context, our local context of Philadelphia, there are 218 Philadelphia public schools and only 4 librarians. In fact, that is 120,000 students served by 4 librarians, meaning that we cannot assume that any student has had exposure to libraries in the K through 12 context. And that is increasing nationwide, not just in Philadelphia. So we want to make sure that they have an introduction to circulating stacks, how to navigate physical stacks. We want to make sure to help them understand the expertise of librarians and how we can help them navigate their academic journey. We also want to introduce them to our very unique special collections. Our very unique special collections. Swarthmore has the Peace Collection, the Friends Historical Library, College Archives, Rare Books. But also, people may assume that college students have an understanding of digital resources, but that also might not be true. They do need help navigating the digital resources we can offer as well. Very important to us, we don't just want to introduce these spaces and resources, we want to politicize them and help them understand how these collections got to Swarthmore, right? The meaning behind them, and that unequal access. Can I mute? The unequal access that we have, that people have to these artifacts.
Hi, over here in Zoom. Would you mind just muting yourself? Thank you.
All right, so we divide this fellowship into 3 different parts that are all interconnecting. In the fall semester, students read theoretical texts, very much forefronting social justice and ethical considerations of technologies. And they also have hands-on workshops to help develop digital literacy skills. Then in the spring semester, they actually apply those skills to library-based digital humanities projects that they get to choose which ones they work on. And we really run this in a no failure, no risk kind of situation where it's only helping us develop these projects, but there are no grades or assessments or deadlines associated with these projects. So just to give you an example of the kinds of texts we assign, besides the 2 that Roberto already mentioned, we've assigned Algorithms of Oppression, Data Feminism, Dark Matters, and we're very much inspired by Andre Brock, who wrote in Distributed Blackness about how Black folk are often absent from the material, technical, and institutional aspects of computers in society. And instead of perpetuating that absence, we really hope to feature spaces in which diversity is integrated across race, gender, sexuality, and ability, and to be very transparent about our critiques of spaces and tools that lack that diversity or actively promote barriers to equity. One example is that we bring students into our imaging studio. So here pictured is Emily Higgs-Popin, our head of digital services, who is teaching the LibLab fellows, you see there, how an object goes from an analog object and is digitized to put in our institutional repository. Emily brings them through the very critical decisions that have to be made when writing metadata that Susan Brown so beautifully talked about yesterday and did my work for me. But also what is gained in the digital affordances and accessibility of that institutional repository, but what is lost in making that analog object digital and not seeing or holding or feeling the real thing in your hands. We then move to showing them how that data can be used to support research and scholarship through transcription projects, data management through OpenRefine, and how both the transcription and the data management really involve expertise about how we're categorizing, how we're tagging, how we're making decisions about what word is that, how are we tagging for gender or genre or race. And luckily we have James Truitt, who always demonstrates through the Friendly Networks project. If you're not familiar with it, I highly recommend looking it up. which is based in our Friends Historical Library collections and Quaker meeting notes and diaries. And this is my personal, most exciting, enthusiastic part of the fellowship. We also encourage students to learn how to make our library collections more accessible through emerging and immersive technology. So students work on 3D scanning, modeling, and printing objects from our collection, and then rendering them in virtual and augmented reality to make them more accessible to folks who might have physical mobility, seeing or hearing impairments, or just geographically cannot get to Swarthmore for a variety of reasons. Here you see a very difficult problem that we had to solve. We have a lot of items in our collections that are very difficult to preserve and store, like a giant dove made out of tissue paper, right? It is a preservation nightmare and a storage nightmare, right? But we can 3D scan this object for both preservation and access purposes so that it can be moved off-site and actually be preserved for longer. And yes, the topic of the moment is AI. We do cover artificial intelligence in this fellowship, but we preface it by a lot of work on the human labor and environmental impacts of AI with articles like the one pictured here. And thanks to Miriam Posner, who is also at this conference, we have students play Moderator Mayhem, where they actually get to experience what it's like to be a social media or AI platform content moderator, the stress and pressure of that. We teach students how to use HTML and how to code using HTML and CSS to make basic websites using GitHub and GitHub Pages, and then we teach them how to use Copilot and compare their results. So they're doing the same process with two different tools to understand how the tool could work. I'm going to end with a quote from Catherine Harris, who is in the back row right there, from this great article about screwing around in digital pedagogy. What we're really trying to do with this fellowship is support students playing, right? Learning through low stress, low barrier to entry play, where they can literally be paid. We pay students 8 to 10 hours a week to think, to experiment, to learn, and to figure out where their interests lie, and to work together. We want them to really embrace failure and to know that there's no consequences for their failure in this context, so that they can apply what they've learned in a way that is really beneficial to their ethical understanding of these tools.